This video is going to talk about the changes to the cattle industry between 1876 and 1890. So, what we see in this time period is significant problems facing the cattle industry, which means that it has to change significantly in character. There's a series of crises that mean that the open range farming system kind of begins to come to an end, and it's replaced by smaller ranches, fenced off, and more manageable instead. So what are these crises? Well, first of all, there's a big problem in that there's an overproduction of beef. So we've had the beef bonanza in the 1870s, and what we've seen is that the prices for cattle fall because there's just simply too much beef being produced. There are too many cows. By 1882, profits for the ranchers are falling. And so to try to reflate the price and make ranching more profitable, what the ranchers do is they stop cattle from going to market. They keep them on the plains. They hope that by reducing the supply, they'll be able to inflate the price and start to improve their profits. But that actually created another problem, which was the problem of overstocking. So what we have is significant pressure on the grass supplies of the plains. We've got large numbers, hundreds of thousands, millions of cattle on the plains. We've also got the buffalo. Obviously, they're in declining numbers quite seriously by this point. They also want the grass. We've got horses, both from the white settler colonists as well as from the Native Americans that are reliant on the horse. We've got sheep farming on the plains, which again was, very damaging to the grass supplies. This overstocking of cattle is really bad for the environment of the plains, for the grass supplies, for the soil. And what we get in 1883 is a serious drought, and that leads to the grass withering, which exacerbates the problems. And the dry conditions lead to a series of prairie fires, which further reduces the grass cover on the plains. And then the big problem, the sort of the issue that is the kind of the straw that breaks the camel's back, if you like, is the bad winter of 1886 to 87, otherwise known as the Great Die-Up, where temperatures were as low as minus 55 degrees Celsius. Now, as we've seen, the cattle are already weakened because of the drought and the declining grass supplies. But now that the snow drifts are so big, they can't reach the grass in the winter. Thousands and thousands and thousands of cattle die on the plains. And this really kind of brings an end to the system of open range ranching. We see a shift to smaller ranches because the large ranches, they just can't protect their cattle. They cannot keep them from dying, and they also can't keep them in good enough condition to be able to make any profit on them at market. So they have to kind of change significantly how they breed and rear cattle on the plains. And, it's this is one image, waiting for a Chinook, which is one of the images from the sort of an artist's sort of impression of the sort of crisis of the bad winter and the conditions. And you can see there just sort of an emaciated cow. How's that cow going to get to the grass when it's absolutely buried under, significant quantities of snow? So we see a move to small ranching, and what benefits does that provide? So again, this is important. We do see the cattle industry continue, but it's smaller and it's different in character. Why are these smaller ranches better than the open range farms? Well, first of all, the smaller herds could easily be found when the snow's closed in, and you could bring them and keep them close to the ranch buildings where you've got shelter, you've got barns, and you've got food. So it was much easier to manage the small herds. Imagine if there's a bad snowstorm, riding out for miles to round up all your cattle and then bringing them back. How difficult that would be if you keep them close to the farm. Smaller is much better. Secondly, smaller herds again require fewer resources. So when you have droughts, it's far easier to provide water to the herd. using wind pumps to draw up water in areas without reliable surface water. And smaller herds are easier to guard, so cattlemen could start to get more control over the sort of perceived problems of rustling, of individuals stealing cows from the ranches. Uh, Smaller herds also reduce the supply of beef, and again, if you reduce the supply of something, that's going to probably inflate the price. So it means that you could sell higher quality meat at higher prices, which enabled the cattlemen to become profitable. And again, that there is a move to producing higher quality meat. So what they do is they buy pure-blooded breeds of cow, Herefords, Holsteins, particularly. These could not be allowed to wander freely because you had to manage the breeding. You couldn't just have them breeding with any old cow. You needed to keep them breeding within these kind of high-quality specimens, kind of engage in selective breeding to support that rancher's fence in their land with barbed wire, to ensure that kind of cross-pollination, if you like, isn't taking place. This diagram here kind of summarizes the changes that we see and this kind of decline or changing characteristic of the cattle industry here. And you can have a look at that in your PowerPoint. But if you get a narrative account question on this period, that would give you a structure for approaching that. Now, one of the things that this hints at, of course, is the problems that we get between the cattlemen and the homesteaders. And what we've got is a situation where we've got what Elliot West, the historian, calls the sort of contested plains, where we see different groups vying for control of the resources of the plains. And obviously we have the homesteaders on the one side and the cattle ranchers on the other side as one conflict. And that obviously leads to various kind of law and order problems that we'll discuss perhaps next week. We'll look at law and order as a theme in more detail. Okay, that'll do for now. In the final video, I'll just talk you through the work for this week and any other sort of points that come to mind. Thank you.